Let's get started with an active dynamic warm-up. We're going to start with a standing knee hug to the chest. So you want to hug that knee as tight to the chest as you can. Stand tall through the down leg. We're going to go 2 on each side. Make sure that top foot is dorsiflexed, so pull the toes up towards the shin. Keep the head and chest nice and high. Then we'll switch it to a quad stretch. Grab opposite hand, opposite foot. Reach up nice and tall towards the sky. Make sure there's a straight line from the fingertips all the way down to the knee. For more of a stretch and an activation, push the top of your foot back into your hand as you're holding this position. Make sure not to pitch forward, stand up nice and tall. From here, we're going to transition into our ankle cradle. So you're going to grab over top, support underneath the knee, pull it up to a 45-degree angle, standing nice and tall through the down leg. We'll go same thing on the other side, standing nice and tall, really extending through the hips of the downward leg. This time, we're going to add in a figure 4 stretch. So you're going to drop it down low, ankle right above the knee, sink the hips down and back. You should feel the stretch in the hip of the top leg. So ankle cradle first, get high before you get low. Drop those hips down and back. Make sure you're nice and stable here. If you need added support with a chair or a wall, that's totally fine. Next, we're going to show you a side view here of some scoops. Kickstand one leg out, hinge, reach the hips back, scoop down towards the ground, stand all the way up. So you want most of your weight to be on the back leg, about 75%, 25% on that forward heel. Make sure the front leg stays nice and straight. Use the weight of the torso to drop even lower into the stretch. Exhale on the down. Stand up nice and tall to finish. Remember to reach those hips down and back. And we'll do a few more reps in the front view. So you can see here we want to maintain normal spacing between the ankles, knees, and up at the hips, so we're maintaining alignment. As we're scooping downward, the hips go straight back, not off to the diagonal. Make sure to stand nice and tall. Next, we'll take a nice wide stance for some lateral squats. So you're going to reach the hips down and back, so like you're reaching for a chair behind you. And we want to try to aim for a vertical shin of the bent leg. So we don't want our knee to come too far forward. Try to keep it stacked over the heel and over the ankle. Reach those hips down and back. You can also take it a little bit lower here. If you do decide to take it all the way down to the ground, as shown here, make sure that that heel of the standing leg stays flat on the ground. This will make sure that we're working on our ankle mobility, stretching out our Achilles tendon. Always try to maintain proper posture. Do a little reset before standing all the way up. Slowly walk the feet in to about hip or shoulder distance. We're just going to do some ankle rockers. So we're rocking back onto the heels, up onto the toes. Now when you rock up onto the toes, you want to make sure you're driving through the ball of the foot. So press that big toe into the ground. Don't let those ankles flare out, so we want to keep everything nice in alignment. From there, take a step out. We're going to do some bodyweight squats. So you want to drive the feet out like you're trying to rip the floor apart with your feet. Maintain that position, sink the hips down and back into a squat. Squeeze the glutes to stand up nice and tall. From here, we're going to transition to a Saigon squat. So we're going to bend forward and then turn out the toes and hips so that you can sink down into a full deep squat. You can rock back and forth, shift your weight here to open up the hips, and lift the hips to reset the position. pull yourself back down into the deep squat when you're ready. Just do a couple more reps here. Pull yourself all the way down. Really try to open up the knees, open up the hips. Really work on that deep squat position, keeping the head and chest nice and high. From here, we're going to transition to an elbow to instep. So deep lunge, big step forward, opposite hand plants on the ground. Same side elbow to the ground, rotate through the thoracic spine. We're going to do that a few times, elbow to the ground, and rotate. Notice there's a straight line from one hand to the other. Now we can flare out that forward leg for a little bit more of a stretch. And we'll repeat the same thing opposite side. Big step forward, elbow to the ground, elbow to instep, twist through the thoracic spine, make sure that the shoulders and the head are twisting. From there, externally rotate that forward hip to get a little bit deeper stretch. Stand up nice and tall. We'll do one more on each side. Just showing you a sideways view here. So notice that that forward foot is staying flat on the ground, and we're letting the knee come forward over the toe. Externally rotating the hip to get a little bit deeper. Same thing other side. So opposite hand plants, elbow to instep, T-spine rotation. Nice straight line from hand to hand. Then we'll externally rotate. You can see we're getting a better hip flexor stretch on the extended back leg. From here, we're going to transition to the ground for some rollover V-sits. Make sure you have space. So you're going to rock back onto your shoulder blades, come forward into a V-sit, reach up and out. Make sure you're not reaching down towards the ground. So rock back onto the shoulder blades. Make sure you're not applying too much pressure onto the neck. And as we rock back, we want to relax the low back, get a little bit of traction. As you come forward into the V-sit, you're going to feel a stretch through the hamstrings. So sit nice and tall on that V-sit. Keep the hands on the ground as you rock back for added stability and support. We'll lay back down to the ground, palms flat on the ground, knees bent at 90 degrees, and we're going to drop into a modified iron cross position. So we're working a little bit of rotation here through the lumbar spine. So drop the knees all the way down to the ground. Make sure that the muscles in the neck are relaxed. Same thing with the muscles in the lower back. Just making sure we're warming up the body in 360 degrees. From here, we're going to transition into glute bridges. So you want to be up on the heels, toes pulled up towards the sky, arms reaching towards the ceiling, and we're going to lift the hips into a hip bridge. So we don't want to hyperextend the back, so we're not so much going for height here. We want to make sure that we're using the glute muscles to contract and bring us into hip extension. So maintain that nice arm reach straight up. Make sure the toes and knees are in alignment with the hips. And don't let those feet flare out to the side. From there, we're going into alternating leg raises. So you want to make sure that you're tucking your pelvis under. If you were wearing a belt, you would imagine tilting your belt buckle up towards your chin. So we want to maintain contact with our lower back and the ground. That's what protects our spine, and we want to maintain that core activation. So we're just alternating legs here. Rolling it up, we're going to come to a seated position for windshield wipers. So as we're sitting, our toes and knees are going to be at 90-degree angles. And we're going to be working internal and external rotation at the hips simultaneously. So you should feel both knees dropping to the ground on each side. That's our ideal position in this seated position. That top hip is going to lift up, and that's okay. That's completely normal here. Next, we're going to transition to a standing position. We're going to work on a little bit of glute activation in a slightly different position. So we're going to do a hinge with reach. So we want to unlock our hips, feet about hip to shoulder distance apart, and we're just going to reach those hips down and back, ideally getting to a nice flat back position. Squeeze those hips to stand up nice and tall. Add in an arm reach. So we're working on some shoulder flexion and mobility as well. So you want to be in a nice straight line from hips to fingertips. Use those hips to bring you back into extension. From there, we're going to warm up our upper back, our scapula, also known as the shoulder blades. So we're going to transition to a quadruped position, and we're just going to do some retractions and protractions. So we're pinching the shoulder blades together and pushing them apart, all while staying in this quadruped position. So ideally you want your knees under your hips and your wrists under your shoulders. Really try to mobilize the shoulder blades here. Keep the head in neutral alignment with the rest of the spine. Next, we'll transition into cat-cows to work on mobility through the spine and the pelvis. So to transition into cow, head comes up, arching the low back, tuck the chin to the chest, and really try to reach and press the upper back up towards the sky. And we're just going to alternate between the two. Thank you for joining us for our active dynamic warm-up.